We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. It. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Woo! That's right, Kiara Johnson. Did I get that right? I hope so. Kiara Johnson. Oh, okay, that's right. Okay, you told me that there were going to be some trolls in here. Matt Kirby on time as always. Good to see you, Jared. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm real good. You know, look at the kids are going to come in and troll hard now. You know, back from Miami. It's so you know, nice and tan.
Yeah, you were down in Miami for what, about a week or so? You got a nice tan going on. And you know what? Good to see you, Tyler Andrew. Good to see you, Dwayne Jones. Listen, when I did the intro for you on the first show, I felt like we just I didn't really do a great job of like giving you the floor and letting you know, or letting people know who you are, what you've done. I did mention that you and I were, we had a connection through your time with the Army National Guard, but like, how long were you with the Army National Guard?
So I was just under 24 years, served active within the Guard. Yeah.
Okay. And then, I mean, you did overseas tours. We've talked about this, but where were some of the places that you went?
Yep. So I served in Iraq, end of 03 to 05. And then, COVID years, that's a blur, right? I think 2021. I went over
for all of us
for about a year.
Yeah. Okay. And then during that time, you were the guy, right, who spearheaded the NIL effort with the Michigan Army National Guard and the Michigan football team. Obviously, NIL, when that came along, that was like, that opened the door for you guys, especially in the recruiting division. But what made that all come together? At what point were you like, you know what, like we need to get the Michigan football team involved here? How did that all happen?
Well, so we had some general officers who are older, and they said, what we need to do is we need to get on social media. And I went and looked, and none of them even had social media. So I was like, oh, this is going to be good. These guys don't even have social media, but they're going to tell us how to do it. So they said, what if every soldier just recorded everything we do and just put it on social media? And I was like, well, people will go to jail. People will get in trouble. Like, I was that soldier. We shouldn't record half the stuff we do. I appreciate it, Tyler. Thank you. So I was just sitting in my office. Thanks, Ricky. And I said, you know what? Like, NIL is brand new. Like, why don't we just pay these guys to come out, record what we do, and they tell people we're cool? Because I feel like, you and I know we're cool, but when JJ McCarthy says I'm cool, people care and people listen, right? Yeah. So I designed that whole idea. I brought it to my leadership, and we took it up the chain up to the Pentagon, and they came back and said, you will go to federal prison if you do that. And I was like, oh, this is a great. Immediately when somebody threatens prison, it's a good idea.
You're on the right track.
We got to find a way around it.
Yeah.
So we did. The first thing you did with us, actually, the state of Michigan funded it. The governor got involved and was like, yeah, that's a great, two great organizations, the National Guard here in Michigan and the greatest university in the country sitting right in Ann Arbor. Let's put them together. And so, we did that. And and then we just took it from there. Once we proved it and, nobody went to prison. Pentagon came back and said, oh, that's a great idea. Here's a quarter million. And we went bigger with it. So.
Yeah, that was awesome. And I've talked about this a number of times on the show, but I've had some incredible moments in this career. And I started the Facebook page this is crazy, dude. I started the Facebook page 8 years ago, and about a week ago, it officially went over 100,000 followers, which I'm sure now that I've said that, we're going to get a whole bunch of people unfollowing to take it back under 100,000, right? So you want to make sure you're safe. But, that's a little over 8 years of just like constantly pumping content in trying to build this community. And, during that 8 years, like I've experienced a lot of cool things, but the stuff that I've been able to do with you and the National Guard, like the first thing we did together in the Chinook, like I don't know that people understand, like a Chinook is a giant school bus sized helicopter. It's the one with the two propellers on the front and the back. And somehow or another, Jared was the guy who got it approved to where they put a jacket on me, shackled me to the lift gate of this thing, and we're flying at what, about 3,000 feet, 5,000 feet? How high were we?
No, I don't think you guys were even that. I mean, maybe 1,500, 1,000 to 1,500 to get over a good stadium look. Yeah.
Okay, so flying at about 1,500 feet. I mean, it's look, whether it's 5,000 or 1,500, if you fall out of it, right? So like, I'm tethered. All right, I'm tethered to the back of this thing. I've got Mason Graham and Colston Loveland were in there on one side, Mozzie Smith on the other side. Yeah, Derek Moore was in there. It was just, and we did a fly from Grand Ledge to Ann Arbor. We flew over Michigan Stadium, and I was filming it from the back. And then, we did it again. Jared and I were actually in the Black Hawk helicopter for the UNLV game in 2020.
Believe us.
I'm not exaggerating here. In 2023, we flew over the Big House for the UNLV game, and Jared and I were in the Black Hawk for the fly over there. And once again, I'm hanging out of the side of this thing and trying to capture everything that's happening, along with just being in complete awe about how cool this thing was. So Jared and I, again, we've been working together now for a number of years. We've had some really cool experiences together, and we actually talked about doing the podcast together years back. We thought that this would be a good thing because we just clicked so well. And so that's Jared. I mean, good guy, Army National Guard guy, heavily involved with NIL. He got to know JJ and his parents really well, spent some time with Blake Corum. And now here we are sitting on the podcast and trying to make sense of a season that, look, man, things are starting to feel a little bit heavy in Ann Arbor. If there's one word I could use to describe going into this weekend, it just feels heavy. And if you get on social media and you listen to sort of the commentary surrounding this team, and it's not just coming from the crazy fans who always want to complain about everything. It's coming from guys who are connected to the program, have a history with the program. There is some concern, and it really seems like this is a pivotal weekend for the Michigan football program. And here's why it's heavy. Let me set the stage here, Jared, and then you and I can talk about it. So there is growing concerns about where the program is headed. The concern is based on a talent versus performance gap, right? So Michigan is not a program that is starved for talent. When you look at this roster on paper and you go through, and we've done this a number of times, Jared, there is talent all over this roster. And I know that there's young talent on the offensive side. Obviously, you have a true freshman quarterback. Andrew Marsh is a true freshman. You've got 2 sophomores on the offensive line. But when you go over the defensive side of the ball, it's veterans everywhere. It's guys who've been playing football for a long time. So when the talent doesn't match the performance, everybody starts to look at the coaching staff and say, okay, what the hell's going on? Is it culture? Is it coaching? What is the issue here? And it really comes off as a lack of discipline, lack of execution, and a lack of leadership. And one of the things that I think stands out that is perhaps the most alarming is the lack of progress on the offensive line. The offensive line, we're now entering into week 6. And when you look at we're going into week 7, but when you look at week 1 through week 6, not only is there not really much progress on the offensive line, but I think you could argue that maybe they've taken a step back. I know they've had some injuries up front. I know Brady Norton was out. Gio was out for a couple games. He's back. I think Brady Norton's expected to be back this weekend. Obviously, you lose Andrew Babalola, but he's a true freshman. The fact that this offensive line is struggling as much as it is, given the fact that that's Sharon Moore's bread and butter, that's a little bit concerning, and I think people are struggling to make sense of that. And I think, I was listening to Jake Butt talk, and he was kind of looking at the team overall, and he feels that the Michigan Wolverines are sort of at this fork in the road, right? Where they're not that far removed from a championship season where like they were at the top of college football. But you're at a point now where you've had one subpar season, and now if things go sideways against Washington, you can get real far away from playing championship football real quick. And I think that that's Jake Butt's overall concern, is how he voiced it going into this weekend. So I'm going to ask you, Jared, like when you look at Washington coming to town, we looked at this game preseason, and I'll be honest, I thought Washington was going to be a relatively easy win. It's in Ann Arbor. Michigan's got all these weapons. They're going to have a dynamic freshman QB, yada, yada, yada.
Way off.
All of a sudden, it doesn't feel that safe. This one feels like a game that could go sideways. So I'll ask you, how big is this game this weekend? How pivotal is it for the program moving forward?
I think, for the program, I don't think it's as huge. For Sharon, it's a big game. We all chalk this up as a W, right? You're at home. we had assumed that Bryce was going to take the reins even before Mikey Keene got hurt. Like you said, that defense is loaded, right? They got potential first-round draft picks in that defense. But Washington just looks like a different team. And I think you lose that game. I mean, now you're staring down the barrel of an 8-5 season, really, because I just don't. I mean, Ohio State's tough, right? I'm not going to say we're not going to get too far ahead, but that's a looming battle. And now you think, if you lose to Washington, could you lose to Maryland? I mean, Malik Washington's tough, right? He's very similar to what we're about to face with the Washington quarterback, right? Can run, can sling the rock. You and I know about this kid. I think they have to get this one right, and it rights the ship, and it brings back that confidence too, right? Because now, if you lose this game, does the confidence of the team go away, right? And you made a comment earlier about having all this talent on the field, and when does it correlate to the quarterback or to the coach's fault, right? Look what happened in Penn State. Penn State has more talent than Michigan, right, this year, right?
Yeah.
They're 3-3, and what happened?
I would say so. I mean, I think, but Penn State's always one of those teams where, like, they're talented on paper, but and that was James Franklin's undoing, right? They for better or worse developed a reputation of always coming up short. And I think that it's weird because the media narrative prior to James Franklin's firing was they were all hammering him about, showing his record against top 5 or top 25 teams, or how he does against ranked opponents. But then after he got fired, the media narrative shift to like, oh my God, James Franklin, he was what was right with college football, and he cared about it. And this, college football is so different now. And so it's weird to watch the way that all plays out. But yeah, I mean, look, is this a pivotal weekend for the Michigan football program? I think, if you take what Jake Butt said to heart, I do think in some ways it is, because if you go out and you lose the game this weekend, you drop to 4-3, you're essentially out of the college football playoff. Yep. And at that point, you're wondering, like, how much buy-in are you going to have from the guys the rest of the way? Because you still got Michigan State, you still got Purdue, you still got Northwestern, you still got Ohio State. I mean, you still got a lot of season left to go. You just wonder not only what is that going to do for the actual guys on the roster and the coaching staff, but I'll tell you what, like, in terms of being a pivotal weekend, it is 100% a pivotal weekend for public perception when it comes to Sharon Moore. Coming off of that type of performance against USC on the road, which is arguably their worst performance of the year on both sides of the ball. The offensive line had its worst performance of the year, and defensively from top to bottom, it was an absolute nightmare. If you go out and you drop this game against Washington, which is not head and shoulders above where Michigan is on paper, I mean, I would argue these are two pretty evenly matched teams. Washington obviously does some things better. Michigan does some things better. But this is a game where, for better or worse, coaching is probably going to be the deciding factor. Who comes in with the better game plan and who's able to execute it? And I think that right now, there is a growing narrative, and we'll, this kind of goes in line with Matt Kirby's question here. He says, love Sharon, but should we be a tad concerned about his actual record, which I think is now 11-7 he is, 12-7 if you count the bowl game. Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair, and I want to touch on that a little bit, because it does seem like you saw it last year with the fan base, where it didn't take long for people to just decide like, oh, Sharon Moore is not the right guy for the job. He's not the guy that's going to be able to get it done. He doesn't have any experience, yada, yada, yada. And it didn't take long. I mean, Michigan is still 4-2 at this point in the season. Granted, the two losses looked pretty ugly. You put up 13 points on the road against Oklahoma, and then you do it again against USC. Didn't really look competitive. But when it comes to Sharon Moore, I think that they're the biggest risk in making that hire. Like, if you look at Jim Harbaugh's tenure as head coach of the Michigan Wolverines, he went 6 years. Think about this. He went 6 years where he didn't beat Ohio State. Now, granted, they didn't play in 2020, but 6 years where he didn't beat Ohio State, didn't play for a Big Ten championship, didn't make the college football playoff.
And split with Michigan State.
And split with Michigan State. So 100%. If you apply that to this era now of college football, I know that the playoff is expanded, but there is no head coach that would be able to survive 6 consecutive years of losing to Ohio State, not winning the Big Ten, and not going to the playoff. But I think the thing that was Jim Harbaugh's saving grace was there was a track record you could look to, right? You could see success at Stanford. You could see success at San Francisco. There was always that, well, it's not going right here, but he's proven he can turn things around there. He's proven he can turn things around over there. With Sherrone Moore, there is no track record anywhere else. And so when you go 8-5 one year and then you start off 4-2 on the next year, there isn't that thing where fans can look to that and say, but at least Sherrone Moore proved he could do this elsewhere. And so there's this big question mark hovering over whether or not he's the kind of guy that's qualified for this type of job. And I'll ask you, Jared, I mean, how much of that do you think contributes to how quick people are to pull the trigger and just say, nah, we got to get him out of here. He's not the right guy. The fact that he just doesn't have a track record of head coaching experience anywhere else.
You know, and I'm not comparing these two programs at all, but again, you know, I live in Lansing, so I see a lot of what happens at Michigan State. If you want to continue that coaching carousel, look what's happening in East Landfill over here, right? Like, you're going to lose recruits, which Sherrone's got a great class coming in, right? He's got Carter Meadows, Savion Hyder. He's got some talented kids coming in. The 8-5 season, those weren't his guys, right? That wasn't his program. I don't hold that against him. They got some good wins out of it still. He's 4-2 in his first year, as far as I'm concerned. This is his first year to me, right? Let him get some guys in. Let him get a couple recruiting classes in. You know what I mean? You're not going to get anywhere without continuity. How often does Ohio State change their coach, right? They do it when they have to, right? And they get that continuity. Now, going from Urban Meyer to Day, they kind of got lucky there, born on third base with Ryan Day, but he continued the continuity, right? He kept the staff, right? Hartline's a monster of a recruiter down there. I do think that Sherrone needs to make probably some staff changes. I mean, you kind of just have to, and maybe it makes a splash. You know what I mean? Ohio State hiring, Chip Kelly was a couple years ago, right? That was a big splash of a hire, right? Like, faltered against Michigan, won a national championship. Penn State went out and tried to do it, right? Stole Knowles away from Ohio State to make that splash, you know, and it didn't really amount to much for them. But I don't think it's time to say Sherrone Moore is the problem. He needs a little bit more time in my book. Last year just wasn't his. It wasn't even his. I mean, he literally had none of those recruits other than maybe as an assistant, you know. But so to me, he's 4-2 in his first year with, you know, and I love Michigan fans because I am one, and I've been guilty of this. You've been guilty of it. We've done this together. Chicken Little, right? The sky's falling. We're 4-2. They could win out and make the playoff. And you know, 8-9 weeks from now, we're like, dude, this team, I told you this team was going to do it. Everybody, you know what I mean? And everybody's high-fiving and, you know, but, and I get it. It's a standard that you set at Michigan, right? It's a standard that
right.
These fans expect. And you are a couple years removed from a national championship, you know, but I'm not ready to pull the plug on Sherrone, but he's got to make some changes. He's got to show, and he did it. Like we talked last podcast, he made that change to let Bryce run. And then now they pulled the reins back. You know, I was looking at a stat that I think you and I were talking about. The Washington quarterback, he's had like 67 design runs this year. Bryce, like 18.
Yeah. And
Bryce is way more athletically talented than this kid. Like, if you're going to let the reins out, then let the reins out. Don't just say it. You know, I mean, what game did they do against CMU? You let the reins out against the fifth graders.
I get it. And then you know, you have Biff Poggi going on record saying, "Look, we're never gonna hold this guy back again. We're never gonna take the air out of the ball." And then you know, you go on the road to USC, and you know, Underwood comes up and he's a little bit limpy, and you're like, "Oh shit, what do we got coming up behind him?" And Sherrone Moore did say
football, that, baby, we're playing football.
And I get it. But Sherrone Moore did say, "Look, if you're gonna run one quarterback, you better make sure you have two." I mean, that's a word for word for the most part. I may have missed a word there.
To me, I completely disagree with that, and I'm sorry. The night before, a week before that game, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson played in one of the greatest NFL games I've seen in a long time, and both of those guys ran for more than 10 times. Name the backup for Buffalo or the backup for the Ravens.
Right.
Nobody knows. But you know what those coaches know? Every game matters, and you have to win. And if your guy is the most talented at doing something, you have to let them do what they're talented at. I'm sure that every coach cringes when their quarterback runs the ball, but if it's going to help you win the game, would you rather lose and have your quarterback healthy? What's the point of that? You got a healthy Bryce Underwood, and you guys are in the, right. You know, the Hanes Underwear Bowl. Sweet.
Right, but we kept everybody healthy, right?
Yeah, but we're
That
all
was-
healthy.
Yeah,
We're
that
all
was.
playing.
I remember after the Oklahoma game, I was
Silly.
like, that was one of my biggest criticisms. Like, yeah, you got out of that with no injuries, and you didn't really
And you
commit any
lost.
turnovers, but you lost the game.
A game that you were in.
Right, a game that
You were
in the
in it.
second half you had a chance to like make this a game, and like for
Yeah.
whatever reason it was just it looked like they were stuck in mud. Seth Scott from the YouTube page, he says this makes more sense than what I've watched and read. He's still a first-time head coach with a young team. Year 3, let me see. Year 3 would like to see more. Oh, year 3, he would like to see more. He's not afraid of change because he went out and got a new offensive coordinator. And look, I think that is a fair praise of Sharon Moore, because for all of the shortcomings you might think he has as a head coach, he has proven that he's willing to make changes, that he's willing to do things differently. He's willing to move some pieces around on the roster. And if he feels he needs to, he's willing to make some changes on the staff as well. And I agree with Seth, and I think that's probably where you're at, Jared. I don't think that I don't think any reasonable person is calling for Sharon Moore to be fired right now. But I do think, geez, look, see how bright I just got? Can I turn this down a little bit? God, I can't figure out the lighting in here. I got natural lighting in here. When we start out, it's bright. And by the time, look at when I turn this off, I'm like, I feel like I'm starting
keep
like
your OnlyFans light off and we'll be fine. I think you're good right there. Stop
okay. Am I bright enough over here?
You're good. Yeah.
He's proven that he's willing to make changes. And I think that was one of Harbaugh's like biggest drawbacks during his first 6 years, was that he was so loyal to his guys. And especially when it came to Don Brown, that it was almost going to be his downfall. It doesn't look like Sharon Moore has that same type of problem. So for sure, the guy is willing to make changes. You got to give him the benefit of the doubt and try to let those changes manifest into success on the field. We are just a year and a half into it. But I go back to what I said earlier, that I think the lack of patience is due to you don't have that security blanket of a proven track record elsewhere. You can't look at Sharon Moore's record as a head coach somewhere else and be like, you know what, though? He turned around that team, or he led that team to 10 wins, or he did this, or he did that. I get that he was the acting head coach in 2023 for Maryland and Ohio, or Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. And look, Michigan went 3-0 in that stretch. And so you're looking at Sharon Moore and you're like, he can do it, right?
I could coach those teams.
I was going to say there's now we're just, that's a stretch. But,
Okay, fair enough.
but
I will accept that.
there is a difference between stepping in as the acting head coach and actually being the head coach and all of the other duties that come along with that. And I think that that's where, look, man, it's just, he's going to have to prove it. There is one interesting aspect of this whole Sharon Moore thing. When we talk about lack of track record, right? There is a track record that he's starting to build that I think is buying him some equity with Michigan fans. And that's his track record against Ohio State. In 2023, he was the acting head coach in Ann Arbor. Michigan gets the W. And then the following year in 2024, he goes into Columbus as a 3-touchdown underdog. And what's he do? They walk out with a 13-10 win. And so Sharon Moore, for as much as the regular season really isn't going the way that everybody wants, he still has this ace up his sleeve where it's like, it's Ohio State. And I want to play this video because I want to get your reaction, and I want to get some reaction from the fans to see if they generally agree, because we are in a different era of college football now where like it seems like the expanded playoff field has almost minimized the importance of certain games. Dave Portnoy, love him or hate him, he was talking about where he stands on Sharon Moore, and then he brought up the Ohio State thing. So I'm going to play this video, and then I want to get your reaction to it, and we can get some reaction from the fans as well. And by the way, this is supposed to be a fan-led show. So if you guys do have questions or specific things you want us to tackle, please throw it in the comments. I promise I will do my best to get to each and every one of them. I don't really do a good job of it, but if you have a question, something that you want us to address directly, please throw it in the comments.
Not my kids. Not my kids.
Except for Jared's kids. We will not be interacting with them. Let me go ahead and roll this video from Dave Portnoy. This is Dave Portnoy talking about where he stands on Sharon Moore, and then also bringing up the Ohio State angle.
There's a lot of people in Michigan circles, I think, who believe he is not the guy. I think it's too early. But I will say this, and I know Blutman rants about it. I happen to agree with it. You have to make decisions. I'm not there yet. I want to see the rest of the season play out. I think the quarterback's very good. I hate the play calling, but If you believe he's not the guy, there's no point in waiting around. Like even the Patriots with Gerard Mayo, like hired him, fired him really quickly, and they got the guy. They got Vrabel, and it turned everything around like that. So I want to see how this year plays out, but I need to see improvement. And I don't know what happens if we do the same exact thing that we do every year with him or last year, which is stink and then beat Ohio State. I mean, if he doesn't beat Ohio State, I'm probably at he's not the guy already mode. But if he keeps stinking and then beating Ohio State, then it's a confusing situation.
That would be something. If he just never loses to Ohio State but keeps going like 9-3.
Because in a weird way, then it's like, okay, I can kind of live with that. Like if we don't win, if we go 0-10 and then beat Ohio State every year, I can talk my talk. I can do that. I can kind of live with that.
Yeah, he allows you.
You can't go 0-10 and then lose to Ohio State and have nothing. But like we still have that.
So let me ask you about that angle there. And I get it. I know it's Dave Portnoy and, he says a lot of things and I don't think he was, it's not 0-10 or 10-0. It's 11, right? There's 11 games before Ohio State. But I'm just curious about the overall sentiment and in how big that Ohio State game is, how much that matters. If Michigan, let's say they stumble again, you stumble against Washington. Last year it was 8-5. This year, you start off 4-3 and who knows where it leads. How much value, I guess, does that Ohio State win still carry if you're Sharon Moore and you're not playing for a Big Ten championship and you're not in the college football playoff, but for some odd reason, man, every year you're able to knock off the Buckeyes? How much weight does that carry?
I think what it's going to be is the situation we're in right now, right? As soon as he does it, so they sneak into that game at, 7 and whatever, 7 and what are they going to be? 7-4, I guess would be, what it is or whatever. And then they get the win. Fans are going to love it. They're going to love him again. Sharon, just the Ohio State. And then next year they start off 4-2 and we're doing this again. Should we fire Sharon? I mean, as a fan, I don't want to live through that, right? I'm not cool with 9-4 seasons over and over, 8-5 seasons over and over. Like I don't want that. I get the lure of beating Ohio State, but then I think you did it on your Facebook. You asked the question: Would you rather win a national championship or beat Ohio State? Right, and the Ohio State fans dealt with that last year, right? They lost to Michigan, but they got the Natty. And I think they went a bit too far on it when they said, "Oh, this Michigan, it doesn't matter anymore." Stop it. If you're involved in this rivalry in any fashion, that's it's called the game. You know what I mean? So it does matter. And it bothers them, and it will bother every one of them until the day they die that they lost to Michigan that year. Do you see those little footballs that have their record on it?
Oh yeah, the commemorative cups, the commemorative shirts, the ball. It all has.
I almost bought one and put it in my man cave just to be like, what's that little blemish?
Yeah.
But, talk about an asterisk of your own creating, but you can't just. You got to see progress, right? Like, and we're not going to beat Ohio State every year. It's going to happen, unfortunately, that we're going to lose to these guys again. But he's got to progress. But I think he's got to get his own guys in there. I want to see him. He's recruiting, and in college football, that recruiting is he's recruiting in the image of what he wants to do with the program. So let's let him get some guys in there. Let's let him get that third year with Bryce Underwood, maybe, because that's his first recruiting class, and then we can see, all right, this was his vision, right? Yeah. And I think that's going to be a dangerous year. That third year with Bryce. Andrew Marsh is in his third year. Savion Hyder will be in his second. Jordan Marshall might be a senior. That sounds
Andrew Babalola is probably second
back, right?
Ty Haywood, right?
Yeah, like these are some dangerous guys that give him a couple years. I mean, he's doing this with a Harbaugh. He was not even these weren't top 10 classes. I mean, they just weren't, and they're underperforming at what they even ranked in high school. So. Yeah, I
agree.
And Portnoy's just doing clickbait on that.
But listen, I think that what you're saying, though, really, it just highlights how different things are right now in college football. That, like, yes, do you want to beat Ohio State every single year? Absolutely. But at some point, real quick here, not making the college football playoff is going to get old and tiresome. And so if you could pick, if you would get a spot in the college football playoff, but you happen to lose to Ohio State at the end of the year, we're about 1 year away from Michigan fans choosing option B, right? Where we just want to be in the college football playoff. We want an opportunity to play for a national championship. The idea of saying that, given what it looked like in this rivalry for 2 decades, the idea of saying like, you know what, I could handle a loss it just seems foreign, right?
Crazy.
Because that's not the type of college football that we were brought up on. But I do think that is the thing right now. When we talk about Sherrone Moore and we talk about a lack of a track record, he does have that, right? In 2023, he was the one standing on the sideline when Michigan beat Ohio State. And in 2024, he was the guy on the sideline when Michigan did it again. And so there is this narrative about Sherrone Moore that like come up short during this regular season, but that final game in November, you kind of like Michigan's chances. And I just wonder how long you can ride that out for.
One thing I think we got to stop doing though, because we talked about it in the last pod, we're not giving Biff Poggi credit for what the 2 games that he won. So maybe we have to stop saying, oh, Sherrone Moore beat Penn State. Sherrone Moore beat Ohio State. Sherrone Moore, because did he? Because we're not giving Biff Poggi credit. What did we say? We said no. He went out and did what Sherrone Moore told him to do. So did Sherrone Moore just went out and did what Jim Harbaugh told him to do? So if we're not giving credit to the sleeveless billionaire, then we can't give credit to Moore.
That's a fair point. Right? I mean, that is
I mean, I said I could win those games, but they ran the ball 33 straight times against Penn State. I could have called that game, Chris. I could have called that game. I could be 1-0 as a college football coach right now. And I mean, that you know what I mean? We can't give him credit. That's why that I don't even look at that. And then the 8-5 year is like, okay, it was an 8-5 year, and I felt bad for the dude. I mean, good Lord, you had Alex Orji throwing for 30 yards in a game. Not in a play, in a game. And he figured out ways to win. I give him credit for that. Like, there's no way that if you go into that season, and you know how we are, we're always excited going into a season. I remember us both being like, Alex Orji might be the man. Like he looked really good in the spring game. He threw a deep ball to Kendrick Bell, looked really good. But if you knew that they were going to average 7 yards in passing, would you have given them an 8-5 record?
No. And honestly,
and those big wins at the end, like that's an incredible coaching.
Listen, I was going to say, if you look at how bad it actually was, it's amazing that Michigan got to 8-5. I mean, not just the fact that they won on the road in Columbus, but like, how did that team with that offense and that quarterback situation get to 8-5? That is just, it's crazy. But again, I don't know. I'm not going to relitigate that. How much of that quarterback issue do you put on Sherrone Moore? But overall, I think, look, the bottom line is, I go back to what I said earlier. I think that the quick to pull the trigger, the quick to just be like, he's not the guy, he can't do it, he's not this. I think it really comes from a place of he's a first-time head coach, and there is no track record to fall back on where you at least have that safety blanket, that security blanket of he's won before, he's succeeded elsewhere. There's no reason to believe he can't do it here. It is, in a lot of ways, it feels like an experiment, and you're just kind of waiting for this thing to pop off. And Shem from the Facebook page, I brought up Jake Butt a lot here recently because I've been listening to what he's been saying. And Jake Butt is a guy, I saw somebody critical of him on the Facebook page. Like, is he ever going to say anything positive about the football program? I'll say this about Jake Butt. There's a reason why fans across the country respect him as an analyst, because he knows his shit. If you listen to him on BTN or when he's covering a game, like, he knows what he's talking about, but he is extremely fair and balanced. And the fact that he's willing to like actually be critical of the Michigan football program, to me, that's a sign of like, you should listen to this guy, because it's important. It's important for him to be accurate. He cares about that. And I think that means you can take what he says to the bank. And Shem from the Facebook page says, Jake Butt said it best, that expecting players to play above their potential is not fair to anyone, but expecting players to play up to their potential every week is perfectly reasonable expectations for the Michigan coaches. And I think that's where we're at. There is just so much inconsistency with this team, right? The defense looks great, and then the defense completely falls off. There's drive where the offense goes out and pushes the ball down the field and hits Andrew Marsh and hits Donovan McCulley, and Justice Haynes is doing his thing. And then in the very next drive, or 2 drives or 3 drives consecutive, It's like 3 and out, bubble screen, made a little move here, and then 5 plays and you're sending out the punt team again. It's like, where the hell did that offense go? And so those inconsistencies, I think, are raising some red flags. And you heard Chip Lindsey talk about it this week, that even Chip Lindsey said it's fair to ask if we're putting our players in the best position to succeed. We're trying to do that, right? We're working toward that. But obviously, this offense isn't playing to the level that it's fully capable of when you look at the pieces they have on paper. The product on the field and the production just really isn't matching up to that. So that's going to be something to definitely keep your eye on this week, because they said that was something they were harping on. They're obviously focused on getting back to the basics and doing the fundamentals right. If they go out and they look discombobulated, confused, and inconsistent again, the narrative that you've heard over the last week about Sherrone Moore and this football program and the direction things are headed, that you can multiply that by 10 for the next week, because that conversation is only going to grow and grow and grow until they show that they can be consistent. But the problem is, outside of Ohio State, Washington is the biggest game they've got left, right? Because after that, it's Michigan State, Purdue, Maryland. I get that Maryland's a little bit better than they have been in years past. So Michigan State, it's the rivalry game, but Michigan State is dog shit, right? That shouldn't be a close game. And then Purdue is Purdue. You got Northwestern in there as well. So the bottom line is, this is Michigan's last opportunity before Ohio State to prove that they can compete with a team that at least shows up with equal talent, right? Mm-hmm. And what I said at the beginning of the show is, when you got equal talent versus equal talent, that's when coaching comes into play, right? Because your game plan has to matter. How you coach up your players. Can they execute? That's where you really find out what you're made of. And that's why this weekend is going to be so critical, because there is a narrative growing about Sherrone Moore that he's not that. And you can't see what happened against USC happen again for a second consecutive week in your own building.
Yep. No, and the other thing, again, the sky's not falling here. You have, what's the most important position on the field for offense? It's a quarterback. We have an 18-year-old kid there, right? All the talent in the world, all the upside in the world. Freshman quarterbacks don't start in major programs like this. And there's a reason. You know what I mean? College football is different. I was never a major athlete. I played at a junior college level in basketball, and moving from high school to that level, it was amazing. I didn't have 2 numbers like you. I was just a regular guy, but moving even to that level where I saw my first 7-foot player on the court was like, how do I shoot over this guy? Moving from Belleville with all the talent in the world that Bryce has to Big Ten football is a jump. And I think he's progressing, and I think he will continue to progress rapidly. He's a very smart kid. He's very dedicated. I mean, good Lord, just looking at the press conference, the kid's polished like he's been in the NFL for 10 years.
He's been Michiganized. Been Michiganized. Like, I think, there was the preseason when BTN showed up, and I think Jake Butt was the one who asked him, like, hey, something about him being a true freshman, and Underwood responded like, well, they've never seen a true freshman like me.
Only time he messed up.
And I think probably after that, they were like, listen, young man, we're not going to answer questions like that, because when he came out for his first media availability on Monday and he was being asked questions, it was very deliberate, and he wasn't going to say any more than he needed to say. And, that's what you've come to expect from those press conferences. So, yeah, look, man, there's a lot going on, right? Last year was kind of an anomaly with how crazy the transition was. This year, you've got a true freshman quarterback, and you do expect there to be some bumps and bruises along the way. But there are other aspects of this team that kind of just make you raise your eyebrows, and you're like, why does it just always look so difficult for this team to put together a complete game, offense, defense, start to finish? And I think that's really what fans are looking for is, can these guys just come out and play a consistent game, play up to their potential, not necessarily beyond it, like what Seth said in his comment. You don't got to play above your potential. Just play at your potential and do it for a full game on both sides of the ball. That's coaching, that's discipline, that's leadership. And I think if they can do that, they come out of this weekend with a W. But if we start to see some of the same issues pop up once again, Damon Williams is a guy who's immensely talented. They've got weapons at wide receiver. They've got a dangerous running back. Yep. And if Michigan is not on its game defensively, and you see lapses on the offensive side of the ball, just, you don't want the Bluebirds to come out in the big house on a fall Saturday. That's not what you want at this point if you're Sherrone Moore.
So as your assistant, I got to keep you directed. We got to get to some fan questions.
Do we have questions in here?
There's quite a few. A couple of my kids asked questions.
Okay, hold on a second. I got Tony Petrosky says, here's a question. Where have the Manmosas gone? Look, I'm trying to just, not like I had an alcohol problem, like not even close.
Once you got out of rehab, dude, you were good. You were good. You got
narratives about me. I'm not. No, I don't know. I think it's because I'm 41 now. I'm well aware of, like, you know, I'm getting a little bit older here. There's some gray in the facial hair. I'm trying not to drink unnecessarily. You know, alcohol's bad for you anyway. So
I'll bring Manmosas back over here.
I'm trying to stay away from that as much as I possibly can. Let me see here. Travis Connor, is this a question? How do we feel comfortable talking about someone needing to be fired, but we all know we don't want to be fired ourselves? Look, that is a difficult part of this thing, right? It's Sherrone Moore, the guy. Like, I don't doubt that he's a good guy. I don't doubt that his players love him. I've had the opportunity to meet some of his family when I've been at Michigan Stadium. I've met his wife. Doubt she's watching tonight, but she's told me that she watches the show, the podcast. Like, they're all just super nice people. I think his brother-in-law was there, and they're all just super kind. And so, yeah, Travis, it is a delicate thing when you're talking about somebody's livelihood and how they earn an income, and but also that comes with the territory with this type of job. It's a high profile job. It's a sport. Even Jim Harbaugh wasn't immune to that. Like, the only coach I can really remember in recent memory is Nick Saban, but that was because he was winning national championships, every other year. So there was no reason to have that discussion. But for everybody else who's a head coach at a major program across the country, if you are not delivering championships, this conversation is going to come up. Even Matt Rule in Nebraska, like, there's questions about him, right? Like, fans love him, but there's also when is it going to happen? Jonathan Smith in Michigan State right now, they are ready for his ass to be gone. Kurt Cignetti got a ton of buy-in from the Indiana faithful, but why? Because they're headed for their second playoff appearance in 2 years. So it is a results-driven business, and for as much as you like the guy, for as much as you want to see him succeed, right? You want to root for him. Like, we all want to see Sherrone Moore succeed, but I also think, like, there's part of doing this where, like, just having, I think just in general, not just sports, but across the board, I think people just want genuine conversations, right? About real topics and about what people are really thinking. I think anytime you try to blow smoke and you try to, like, overdo it as a fan and be overly positive just for the sake of doing so, like, I just feel like people can read right through that. And so there is a general sense among the fan base. Everybody kind of feels the same way. It doesn't mean you're not rooting for the guy, but you just have some questions. That's where we're at. We're not in somebody needs to be fired. We're just kind of at a point where it's like, I'm curious how this is going to play out. Right? Yeah. Is that fair?
Very, very certain that we just literally said earlier and maybe Travis wasn't on yet, but we both said we are not calling for him to be fired at all. That's not even a thing yet. And yeah, as my daughter said in the comments, part of the game. I mean, if you want to fire me and I get fired like how James Franklin got fired with $20,000 a day, Chris, you can fire me right now. I'll log off and
look, you would never hear from me again. If I got, what was it? What is it? $20,000 a day. If I got fired,
25 cents a second
if I got fired and was making like 25 grand a day, you would never hear from me again. I'd probably move down to the Florida Keys. My wife and I have a spot that we loved. You would never hear from me again. And by the time you saw me, I would be unrecognizable. I would stop shaving. I'd just be living on the beach.
Did you hear that? Do you remember the story of Ed Ordrin, the LSU coach? Remember they won a natty? So they won a natty the next year, completely trash. Yeah. And he was getting fired. And he told the story, he has that Southern drawl and everything, that Louisiana Bayou talk. But he said he went in the room and they said, you got a $15 million buyout. And he said, brother, where's the pen? And he didn't even care. Like, I'm signing and rolling out. Like, didn't even care.
Hard to be upset at that point, and then you get, and look, as a head coach, you are in more ways than you ever were before. Like, you are running a business at this point. It's not just about coaching the football team. It's about meeting with the donors and fundraising and doing all the shit you need to do to keep the operation going. That's a whole different topic for maybe like off season, where, like, I'm just overall, man, I'm highly skeptical of where highly skeptical of where college football is headed, college athletics is headed. They're talking about private equity coming in and infusing $2 billion into the Big Ten. Like, I don't want to hear it anymore. I just want football. But yeah, man, I mean, I think, where were we going with that? Just getting fired and making a lot of money? Yeah, everybody will sign up for that. Let's get to the question here. I think this is from your daughter.
It is.
Amaya Johnson. She has a question for you, Jared. She asks, which assistant coach has had the biggest impact so far this year? I'll throw it to you.
Grant Newsome. Inability to get the offensive line where it needs to be and should be. You and I talked about it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you got some younger guys on the line. I'll give you that. But you have Hadi. You have some. We talk about Crippen, right? Evan Link. Like, I think his inability, and that's his section, right? I think his inability to get that line cohesive, and even just, it's not like they're not talented. We know they're talented kids. They're big kids. I looked at this line going into the season. I was like, this, they got a monster line. You got some big dudes, right? And you bring in Norton, you know, the grad transfer with experience. I think it's just the inability. They just don't look like they know what they're doing. And you and I've talked about it, just completely missing on blocks. You know, just wrong schemes. Guys, you know, two guys blocking one guy, and the edge is coming in unabated, right? So I think he's, unfortunately, in a negative light, he's had the biggest impact. So
did you see this video, by the way, of let me throw it on here. Did you see this video? Yeah, I'm going to pause it right here. Justice Haynes, here's Andrew Sprague, right? And I don't want, you know, I know we're singling him out, but this isn't necessarily to single a guy out. These issues have been happening consistently all through the year. So here's Justice Haynes. You got Andrew Sprague, number 54, down on his knee, looking back. I mean, this is against Wisconsin. Just look at the technique here.
That's what I'm saying, right? That's coaching.
This is tough to watch, because this isn't, when it comes to a Michigan offensive line, this isn't what you expect to see, but this is kind of what we are seeing from week to week. And so I just think that's a good point. I thought you were going to go positive in terms of the assistant coach, but that's great, because we did talk about that on the phone, right? And we talked about how that was Sharon Moore's bread and butter. And does Sharon Moore need to be right? Does he need to be more hands-on with the offensive line? And if he needs to be more hands-on with the offensive line, what does that say about Grant Newsome? I get it. Grant Newsome played football at the University of Michigan. Again, another guy who's a likable guy. People, you know, the players like him, the coaches like him, but you also have to produce. And that offensive line, I would argue, if you look at every position group on this roster, a lot of people are targeting Ron Bellamy because they're tired of the lack of production from the wide receivers. And we saw those drop issues for a good chunk of the season. It seems like they're starting to get that resolved now that they got McCulley and Marsh as the top two guys. But when it comes to this offensive line, it didn't look great last year, and it has not looked great so far this year.
I will say one odd thing that I saw coming into the podcast today, and I don't know if you saw it, but they made the honor roll for the Joe Moore Award.
I did see that. Well, how many teams
like making the honor roll in high school then? Because I graduated with 1.9 GPA.
How many teams are on that list?
I must be everybody. Like, I did see Tulane was on there, and I think the high school down the street was on there. But
well, look, I mean, you got a running back who leads. You got Justice Haynes, who leads the Big Ten in rushing yards per game. And I think he also, does he lead in? No, he doesn't. I think he's second in touchdowns. I'm not sure where he's at in touchdowns. But
in Big Ten,
Yeah, in the Big Ten. But he leads the Big Ten in rushing yards. And so maybe they're giving the offensive line some credit for that.
Video. Right off.
I'm not sure what went into that. But yeah, I mean, that's certainly Grant Newsome has had, you know, an impact on this season and sort of the way that things have played out, but not the type of impact you would obviously want to see. Let's go to Gigi Vasquez. Sorry, I'm not sure if I said that right. Listen, I've seen her name pop up on the Facebook page. I think
she's world famous.
Isn't she? Doesn't she? No, but I think she's, I don't know. I've seen her name pop up. I think, doesn't she run like a Facebook site or something like that, or a tailgate or something?
She comment to us, but yeah, she's got connections with all the players. All the players know her. When I was doing NIL, a lot of them knew her, and she's famous for getting great photos from after the game. And she's just
there you go,
great fan, a great Michigan fan.
All right. Well, she's got a question here. She says, what do you think about the players' chemistry on and off the field? That's, you know, I can't really speak to off the field because I'm not really spending time around these guys and how they're interacting with each other. On the field, that's a hard one because I think we bring his name up a lot. Jake Butt was a guy who said something to the effect of chemistry is a hard thing to measure, but you know when you see it and you know when you don't have it, right? And I think when you look at this football team and how they perform on the field, like when you watch the Wolverines 2021 to 2023, you could see chemistry. You could see leadership. You could see a cohesiveness that this unit was working together on a shared belief and a shared commitment that every play, every down, we're going to do our job, right? And it didn't mean it looked perfect all the time, but there was just that certain something flowing through this team. I haven't seen that yet with this team defensively or offensively. I don't really know, like, I know who the captains are, and I think that Max Bredesen is definitely a leader. Yep. I think Ernest Hausman is a leader on the defense, but like that championship team was not starved for leaders. Even guys who weren't captains, like there were leaders all over the roster, people that were sort of pulling the thing along.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just a result of the record. I don't know what it is, but I don't see that type of chemistry. And so what do I think about it? I think it's not where it should be. And I don't know if that's a fair criticism, but again, I lean on what Butt said. It's one of those things where it's hard to measure, but when you see it, you know it. And I just haven't really felt like I've seen it so far this year. Is that fair, Jared? Are you there?
Yeah, it is. That championship team had a feel. Like when you went in there, it was like a lion's den, and they were the leaders, right? It was different. You and I were around that team quite a bit. I will say I do have one insider for this team, and it's my daughter Kiara. She goes to school there, and she's sent me pictures, videos of the players hanging out. She's seen a few of them, hanging out and doing what college kids do. I won't go any further than that. But they do. You're never going to replicate what happened with that JJ Blake, Sane Rastil. I mean, every guy you mentioned was a leader, right? It was incredible. And I don't know. That's a hard one, Gigi. On the field, it seems like Bryce is getting stronger in terms of what his vocal leadership, right? Him and Justice had that dust up on the sideline and we're good right after, right? I think they talked about it at the press conference, no issues. They seem fine, which that's telling, right? If they had chemistry issues, that would have continued on and you'd see that. I don't see a lot of that on the field, right? I don't see this the fighting on the sidelines, the arguing, even in a 31-13 loss. They didn't seem like they gave up. They didn't seem like anybody was upset. People make fun of or roasting Bryce about smiling on the sideline when they were losing. They're playing a game, folks. Like, you want them to start crying? I mean, I get it. You might have missed the part where he went up and down the line and talked to the offensive line about blocking too. So they seem like they're okay. I mean, it's just, we got spoiled during
and that's what I was going to say. If anything, it like, damn, I feel like I'm in the shadows here again. Let me just give a little juice to this light here so I don't look like I'm fading away. And it's not an OnlyFans light, by the way, which if things don't pick up financially though, Jared, there is a chance I am going to launch an OnlyFans page. If we don't start bringing on sponsors or doing something else, like I may have no choice but to just go full nude and see what happens. Take my chances there.
On this podcast?
No, not here. On my OnlyFans page. Keep up, for God's sakes.
I will not be subscribing.
I will say, it does make you appreciate guys like Aiden Hutchinson and Blake Corum and JJ McCarthy and just that type of leadership and having that much of it on the same team and have all those guys sort of come together at once. Like, unless you're like an Alabama Nick Saban thing where you just kind of go on this run and you create this dynasty, it is fragile. It is you don't want to say it's once in a generation, but it doesn't come along often. And we were treated and spoiled to guys who were exceptional, not just on the field, but off the field. And Jared, you said this, that when you were around these guys, when you were around Blake Corum, right? Like I did a couple of things with Blake Corum. We did something for Mott Children's Hospital together, and he was kind enough to come out and help me with it. I was with him during the National Guard NIL stuff, and I just got to spend time around him. His dad was on the podcast a lot. Like I would talk to his dad out at certain football games. They were just like quality people. And I'm not saying these guys aren't quality people, but when you're young and then you're in college and these guys have a certain level of maturity that, like, I'm 41 years old and I'm looking at them, I'm like, you guys feel like you're older than me, the way that you approach life with the discipline you have and all of that stuff. Like, it just doesn't come along often. And so I think that, going back to Gigi's question, I don't think that this team has that level of chemistry yet. It doesn't mean that they can't get there, and it doesn't mean they don't have the right guys on the roster to be able to get there. But I think you'll know it when you see it. And I think when you see it, you won't have to ask questions like that, if that makes sense, right? I think if you're asking a question like that, you kind of already know the answer. Let's see if I can get to more questions here. Stop with the caution. He's a football player. Let him ball. I'm guessing that is in reference to Bryce Underwood.
We're talking about blocking and everything.
I'm way behind. I'm 6:52, so I'm 4 minutes behind. Just give me a second to catch up here. Let's all take a breath here.
Everybody take a breath. You guys got some good questions in there. Chris is doing a horrible job at managing this, and I will speak to him afterwards before he gets on his OnlyFans. But no, you got some good questions in here. Let's see if you pick a good one. Let's see if you pick a good one. If you don't, I'm just going to log out. So
I'm trying.
Don't mess this up.
Look, man.
You want me to help you out?
I'm just not seeing many questions here. Okay, let's go to Dem Jones Boys. I'm guessing that's not your actual name, but we'll, he says, so he's from the Facebook page. He says, so content with mediocrity, back to watching our rivals dominate the sport. Yeah, look, I don't think anybody's content with being mediocre. I understand why fans are frustrated, because you get a taste of the championship run and you just want that to continue forever. But I'll say what I just said. The reason why those things are so damn special is because it doesn't happen very often. And I know people are going to point and say, well, look at Ohio State, and Ohio State isn't having those kinds of conversations. Like, I get it. And we all want Michigan to be performing at that level. But Jared, I think you made this point earlier in the show that you also don't want to create a situation where you've got a carousel of coaches coming in and out and there's no stability. And you want to lay groundwork. You want to give your guy an opportunity. Jim Harbaugh was given an opportunity, and I would argue he was given a length of time that many other guys wouldn't be able to get. But because of his track record and because of his success elsewhere, he was able to deliver what we all thought he would deliver when he came back in 2015, which was a national championship. And it was that 3-year stretch. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I can say, as a Michigan sports fan, greatest ride of my life. I don't know that anything will ever compare to that, even if Bryce Underwood delivers a natty to Michigan. And I hope that that's the case. I don't think it's ever going to compare to what we experienced there. So it's not that we're okay with it, or content with it. But I also think that there's just you got to be a little bit reasonable with giving somebody an opportunity to do a job at this level. When you brought on Sharon Moore and you made the hire and you made him head coach, you were committed to about 3 years to let this thing play through. And we're halfway through that 3-year period. And I think at the end of year 3, then we'll be able to sit back and have a reasonable discussion about, is he the guy or is he not the guy? Do you think that's a fair amount of time, even given how the turmoil there and the transition and the NCAA investigation and Jim Harbaugh taking so much staff? Do you think 3 years is enough time to really sit back and say, okay, can we make a fair determination at that point?
I think his third year is a fair determination. Third full year. I almost want to throw out the 8 and 5 year. I think Bryce's third year is what matters, because that's your recruiting class, right? That's now technically he got the other one, I guess, because Harbaugh left. But what was there? I mean, Harbaugh held on to the last minute and then bailed, ruined that recruiting class. You had, like you just mentioned, you had the sanctions potential hanging over your head, right? All these other coaches, so easy to recruit against Michigan at that time, right? Dude, they're going to be suspended. You don't want to go there. You're never going to see the postseason. Look at all this nonsense. Kids aren't coming. So you look at continuity programs, right? Alabama, Saban goes to DeBoer. Now, he did not live up to Alabama standards last year, but the cupboard wasn't bare. He wasn't using ramen noodles to make filet mignon. He had the pieces. Sharon did not have those pieces coming. I don't think it was a fair assessment of him when he didn't. I mean, he had top 15, maybe a couple top 20 classes to deal with. Nobody on here can name big name players that Harbaugh signed those last few years. I can't even think of any. It just didn't happen. But then he comes in and he pulls Bryce out from LSU. That's huge. Brings that class up to number 6 in the nation, right? Let's see what he does with the number 6 recruiting class their junior year. That's where I'm at as a fan, as a basement podcaster. I'm looking at that third year and saying, now these are your guys. This will be fully your team. What can you do?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's enough time. And in today's era of college football, you're not going to get much more than that. Like, you're really going to get 3 or 4 years to get it figured out, because you do have the transfer portal where, traditionally you have to bring in your recruits, you have to develop them, you have to get things up and running. But with the transfer portal and with NIL, you don't have to wait 2 or 3 years to turn around a program. If you can nail some big prospects out of the transfer portal, and you can do well from an NIL standpoint, you can build a championship team in 1 or 2 years. And once again, just look down to Bloomington. Look at what Curt Cignetti is doing with Indiana. Indiana has never been a powerhouse football program, but Cignetti has this team number 3 in the country, about to make their second appearance in the college football playoff. They just went out to Norman, and I'm sorry, not Norman. They went out to Eugene and beat Oregon. This team is for real, and it didn't take 5 years for it to happen. Curt Cignetti was able to step in, and it is because he's that sort of like, he's a general. He's a head coach. He's got experience, right? Google me, right? And when you say shit like that, you better back it up. And I remember when he said it, it was at Big Ten Media Days. I remember when he said it, that point, I was thinking to myself, this is going to be hilarious to play back, because I thought Cignetti was a bust. I didn't know who this guy was. He came off as kind of goofy, and then he was saying stuff like that. I'm like, this dude's coaching at Indiana. He's going to get run out of the Big Ten. Yeah. And then shame on me, because here we are two years later, and, Ohio State, Indiana at the top of the conference, and then it's like everybody else. And I don't know. I don't even know that I put Michigan on the same plane as Oregon right now, but it's clear that Ohio State and Indiana are leading this conference, and that's just a wild place to be, given where the Michigan football program was just a couple of short years ago. So that goes to show you how quickly things can change. As it stands today, mid-October, it feels like we are a long way away from what happened in 2023. And what Jake Butt was saying is, this weekend feels like a fork in the road sort of thing, where like you can get it back on track and you can prove that you're a certain type of team, and you're able to compete with teams that are on the same level as you. But if this thing goes south, and if it goes sideways, and the questions that are already there start to grow, the remainder of this season is going to be long and difficult, and people aren't going to be happy with a win over Purdue. They're not going to be happy with a win over Michigan State. They're not going to be happy with a win over Northwestern or Maryland. It's going to be a long time before you get to Ohio State, and then we'll obviously see what happens in Ann Arbor at the end of November.
Everything's still in front of them, though. That's the beauty of this. And
it is, right.
Everybody's jumping off the ship. It's on fire, but we're still going the right way.
So let's do this. Since we're already at an hour here, we've got the game this weekend. I just want to say a couple of things about Washington. Michigan, obviously 4-2. Washington 5-1. The only loss for the Huskies is against Ohio State. I'm going to ask you point blank. You guys can answer in the comment section as well. But I want to know, Jared, this weekend, Washington comes to town. The general consensus on the Huskies is they are a legitimate college football playoff team. They are legit. They got a legit quarterback. They got a legit running back. They got some guys at wide receiver. Tell me, what would a win do for the Michigan football program this weekend?
I think it would calm the waters, right? Like it's turbulent in Ann Arbor right now. And as much as I'm sure the coaching staff is trying to tell the players, hey, stay focused, stay in your lane. In social media era, they're hearing, they're seeing. I mean, they know what's going on. The coaching staff's got to feel pressure too. Sharon Moore puts his pants on just like you and I, right? 2 legs at the same time. But it calms the waters, and it puts them in a stretch where, and I hate saying this, but a calming stretch of games that they should win. They should be able to go and win those games. This is a tough game, and if they can get through this, I think, to Gigi's point, that galvanizes the team, brings them back together, could build that chemistry. Like, hey, everybody was kind of doubting us, talking about our coach getting fired, maybe not even think we were going to win the game. Vegas does favor them by 6.5, but hey, we got it done against a team that Jake Butt said could be a college football playoff team with that quarterback and that running back. So I think it just calms everything down, right? It's okay. Chicken Little, the sky's not falling. We're still Michigan. We still have players. We can still win games that matter. And everything is still ahead of us. And there's a path. right now, I think that path is very convoluted because of Washington, because people are very, very worried about. I'm worried about this Washington game. I'm not so worried after, but yeah, I think it just calms things down for him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing.
Like
A win this weekend, not only does it keep hope alive that maybe Michigan can salvage the back half of this season, perhaps get to the college football playoff, because you beat Washington. I think everybody's going to expect to beat Michigan State, Purdue, Northwestern, Maryland, right? And so you go into that final game of the year. I get, what happened the last 4 years doesn't really mean anything this November, but Michigan has a little bit of a track record now of having like the mental edge over Ohio State, and you get the Buckeyes in your own building. Anything can happen on any given Saturday. And so, yeah, I mean, for sure, if you get the win, it keeps everything on the table. But I think even the bigger point that you're making, Jared, that I agree, is that it's going to take down the heat. It's going to take down the temperature. And I think maybe hopefully a good portion of the fans that are like really frustrated with where things are at will take a step back and give Sharon Moore some grace and just say, look, like, okay, we've proven now we can compete with teams that are on the same playing field that we are. There's some progress being made there. But I will say, I think it's going to require, if they're going to get the win, a consistent effort on both sides of the ball. I don't think there can be these long lapses of the offense where you go 3 and out. Maybe you put together 5 or 6 plays, then you commit a costly penalty, and now you're facing 3rd and 17, and you're going to punt the ball again, which, by the way, special teams, not a strong suit for this team this year. Dominic Savada, who's Mr. All-American, preseason All-American, right? Been a little inconsistent. And then is it Hudson Hollenbeck? Is that his last name? The punter?
Yeah.
So just not great, right? Not great. So if we cannot have to rely on special teams, that would be ideal for Michigan, but it is going to take a consistent effort. So you and I are in the same boat, man. A win this weekend, the biggest thing it does outside of keeping everything on the table, it takes down the temperature. And then I think that in the locker room, the players are going to feel that as well. And maybe some more cohesion, maybe some more buy-in, definitely going to help the culture and that side of things. Let's go to the flip side, Jared. We know and we think a win will do that. What does a loss mean this weekend?
To me, it depends on what kind of loss it is. This is a good Washington team. So if it's a close, they lose by a field goal at the end or something, it battle tests them, I guess is what you could say. But the exact opposite, right? Turns that heat back up, because that's these Michigan fans, and I don't mean this in any disrespect to anybody in the comments or Michigan fans in general. You go through the games and you say Washington, that's a win, but they don't know who the quarterback is. They don't pay attention to what Washington's doing, that they could potentially be a college football player. They just see that we lost to Washington, who's an unranked team, who should be ranked, and it's going to turn that heat up even more. I think that. Yeah, there's a lot of damage that could be done with this loss. And then you and I were talking about it, right? It takes everything off the table at that point. Now you're not making the college football playoff with 3 losses. It's not going to happen. Then you start looking at Ohio State, and it becomes an even more daunting task when you see Ohio State struggle in the first half against Washington, but in the end turn it up, and they whooped this Washington team.
To me, it looks like Ohio State's just coasting right now. I don't even think that they're playing like. Nope. They've got about 3 or 4 more gears that it feels like they can go to. I think right now they're just kind of coasting through the game, doing what they need to do to like take care of business. I don't think we have seen anywhere close to what this Ohio State team is capable of, especially on the offensive side. Their defense is dominant, arguably the best in the country. Right.
It's like they just want to get it over with. They're moving on to the next thing.
Exactly. Right. They're there to take care of business. It's very methodical. That game makes me nervous. And so, yeah, when you talk about what does a loss mean for this Michigan football team this weekend, it's exactly what you said. The heat that's already there goes up significantly. It essentially takes the college football playoff off the table. And then you start to wonder, what does that do for your locker room? Because you've got guys who have been in the program now for a while, mixed with some young guys. You've got NIL money in there and big deals over here. And it's really going to test the chemistry and the cohesion and the brotherhood that you have in that locker room when you take the college football playoff off the table. And it's like, at that point, what are you playing for? You're just playing for pride. You're just playing for each other at that point. Yeah. Some teams, when you have the right type of chemistry, you can do that and succeed. Other teams, if you don't have that, just playing for yourselves and playing for each other, that gets old real quick. And you start to see the result of that on the field. And so I think that's why this weekend is so pivotal, because it is a big game. Washington is a playoff caliber opponent, It's in the big house. The Wolverines coming off an embarrassing loss against USC. They need to take care of business. Before we get out of here, Jared, let's get a score prediction from you for the weekend here. And before you give me that, Damon Williams, Washington's quarterback. This guy is phenomenal. He's 4th in the Big Ten in passing yards with 1,628. His completion percentage is nearly 75%. When this guy throws the ball, he's completing the ball.
Yeah.
But he also has wheels, right? He's got legs. I think against Rutgers, he ran for like 138 yards. I think he's averaging somewhere near 70 yards rushing per game. We know that Michigan defense likes to be aggressive. That can be a dangerous thing when you got a mobile quarterback like Williams. But in addition to Williams, they got wide receiver Denzel Boston. He's got 444 yards, 6 touchdowns on the season. You've also got Jonah Coleman at running back, who's got 518 rushing yards, and his 11 rushing touchdowns lead the Big Ten Conference. And so Washington has some weapons. Total defense, Michigan's giving up 317 yards per game. Washington, 318 yards per game. So they're pretty much neck and neck there. When it comes to offense, Michigan ranks 47th in the nation, putting up 418 yards per game, while Washington 17th in the nation at 468 yards per game. They are 3rd in the Big Ten behind Indiana and USC as the top 2 offensive teams in the Big Ten. There's Indiana again, right at the top of the Big Ten. One of the best offenses. Scoring, last stat I'll give you here. Scoring, Michigan averaging 29 points per game. Washington averaging 33 points per game. Jared, you and I hopped on the phone yesterday. We talked about this game. We're feeling a little bit iffy about this one. Ricky says 104-14 Michigan. You heard it here first. I don't know about that one. But Jared, where are you going here with your score prediction?
And the scary part that you didn't mention is we still don't know if Justice Haynes is going to play. That's what
that's
me.
That is a big X factor.
I'll tell you right now, if Haynes doesn't play, I don't think we win. That's period, point blank for me. Not for just his running ability, but for his ability to block and pick up help.
Well, here's the thing, Jared. If you were placing a bet, you're a degenerate, right? You gamble online. You gamble. So, like, you got to place the bet either way. You don't know if Haynes is going to be there.
Wait an hour before the game, Chris, when the injury report comes out.
Well, for purposes of what we're doing here, you can't give me 2 score predictions, one if he's in, one if he's not.
The rules.
I'm making the rules here. You just got to give me one.
All right. I feel like it's I feel like the defense is they're going to take this personal. I think that you got a lot of veteran guys on that defense, and I think that they're hearing is this defense even really good? And I think Wink hears it, and he probably shares it with them, right? You fire up your defense by saying, they're saying you're not good, and they're saying this kid's going to run all over you. You got the guys. Ernest Hausman can spy this quarterback. I feel like it's going to be like a 27-24 Michigan. And I would have a different prediction if Haynes wasn't playing. That's all I'm going to say. I didn't say 2 scores. I just said I would.
You said 27-24 Michigan?
Yep. I think it's going to be close. I think Zavada hits one. I think Zavada.
Can we see this here? Can this be read?
Is that what yours was?
Score prediction. I've got the Wolverines 27, Washington 24. I think it's going to be close here. Look, we didn't plan this. Jared and I are on the same wavelength here. I think, what do you think the difference is going to be, right? 27-24, it's a close game. What do you think pushes this one in Michigan's favor ultimately?
I think that they let Bryce run, and I think they do designed runs because they're going to see it across the field. They're going to see that other quarterback with designed runs. And the fact that Bryce has 5 times less design runs than this kid, and Washington's 5-1 going all the right directions. They're talking college football playoff. They're doing all these things that Michigan potentially could be doing, and they could have won some of these games. I don't know about Oklahoma, but I think that USC game, they made some egregious mistakes with not letting him play the game. I think that they're going to go back to letting Bryce be Bryce. Haynes is going to come out and run the ball. And I think, again, that defense has pride. They've been there. They're all, God, what do we talk about? They're like senior, grad senior. These
everywhere.
This is it for them, right? This is the last game. This is the last.
Rayshon Benny, Trey Williams, Damon Payne, Derek Moore, Jayshawn Barham, Ernest Hausman, Rod Moore, Jair Hill, Zeke Berry.
Jair Hill's the only one's not a senior, right? Zeke maybe.
Right. But these are veteran guys. These are veteran guys. And that's what I think is ultimately the difference maker.
They're going to come out.
My hope is that Bryce Underwood will run the ball a little bit more, design quarterback runs. But even when he gets out and he's got to create and make things happen when he's rolling out, if he plays free, I like where this offense goes. And the one thing I hope that we don't see is that you don't wait until you're down 2 scores before you really start to go to the well with Donovan McCulley and Andrew Marsh. I understand that Michigan is always going to be a run-first operation until something dramatic changes. But when they push the ball down the field to those 2 guys, good things happen. And so I'd rather see that happen earlier. But ultimately, I think the difference in this one is Wink Martindale challenged his defense, right? According to Damon Payne, he asked what kind of men we were, right? What kind of men are we going to be? And that was an embarrassing performance against USC. I think we see the Michigan defense, regardless of what else happens, those guys are going to come out pissed off. It's in the big house. Their manhood is being questioned. And I think that they've got a golden opportunity to come set the stage, be aggressive, and do what they need to do. I think we get a stellar effort from the Michigan defense. The Wolverines squeak one out 27-24. So
watch the tight ends. Watch the tight ends.
Watch the tight ends. That could be an X factor. We've seen people bring it up. Can Marlon Klein show up? Will he appear in this game and make an impact? We will see. Yep. But Jared, look, hey, for our second show, again, another hour, 14 minutes. I don't think this one sucked as much as the last one. And that's all we can really hope for, right? Is show to show, day to day, week to week. We just hope to suck a little bit less. And if you can develop a habit of doing that, slowly but surely, you're going to get to greatness, right?
I might get out of the basement. Yeah,
it's inevitable. You and me both. I might get actual good lighting in here at some point in time. We will be back next week. Appreciate it, Kiara Johnson. You're a little bit biased there, but appreciate the support here. Appreciate all the comments in the comment section. It was highly active in here, and I know I did a really shitty job of getting to all of it, but that's really just a testament to you guys. We really need a third guy going through all of this stuff and picking out questions so that I can talk and do the questions. But in any event, as always, I appreciate the interaction. We will be back here on Monday to talk about the result. Hopefully, we're talking about a Michigan W. I look, man. I like the shows where it's a positive feel. I like where everybody's feeling good. We got to get back to that. It starts this weekend with Washington. Until then, guys, we'll see you back here on Monday, 6 p.m. Take care.